with the as you know, one of my books was called Refined by Fire.
Mm-hmm.
And
Fantastic. I've read it.
yeah, my editor at the time, Judy, uh, felt that was the best book I ever wrote. So I don't know. Um, it's or books like my kids. I like all of them.
Of course.
I don't have favorites, but obviously philosophy was my first one, and Refined by Fire was technically probably my outstanding one because I use so many I reference so many aspects of it and talked about the history and I was very much interested in the history at that time. I was teaching the history in the chiropractic college. So are we on?
Yeah, we're
Okay.
rolling.
I didn't want to. So anyway, that's why Refined by Fire was my favorite one, and in that sense, because I'd spent so much time. And I have a background of that. Of course, the area that I came from, the town was called Levittown, which built up around U.S. Steel, which was a big steel producer. In fact, if I can go on a little rabbit trail, there in fact during World War II, which was I was born just at the end of World War II. During World War II, uh, there was a shortage of football players for the NFL, and
Right.
they had one they combined two teams, which they called the Steagles, which
Yes.
which were a combination of the Steelers and the Eagles. Uh,
Right.
so that's something that a lot of people don't know. But I
The
don't. In fact, I don't.
diehard Steelers and Eagles fans know that one.
Yes, yes. Anyway, this uh, the two teams were from Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. That's why Steelers and Eagles, and they combined together. Both of those towns are one city I was born in. I was born in Philadelphia, where the Philadelphia Eagles are from, and my wife was born in a little town right outside. Which she always told everybody she was from Pittsburgh, where she really wasn't from Pittsburgh. She was from a little town outside Pittsburgh, uh, which was called Ambridge, and it was a steel town in the Pittsburgh area, in which they built steel bridges. And the fact that the name of the town she was born in was actually called Ambridge, which was a combination of American Bridge, which was the bridge builder,
Hmm.
and and uh, and that's where the term Ambridge came from.
Oh
The
wow.
born in. So we have that steel background. Of course, we also have a little bit of a competitive thing between us because she's from Pittsburgh and I'm from Philadelphia. But in Philadelphia, my father uh, actually came from originally when Levittown was built. It was a combination of two other two small towns that were formed actually around the steel mill in the area, and it was called Fairless Steel, Fairless Works, and it was part of U.S. Steel. And my father moved our family to Levittown, which we were only like 130th. We were the 130th home sold in Levittown, and
Wow.
that ended up being 17,000 homes built in there. So we
Wow.
were in the beginning, and it was really rural. In fact, we used to when I cut the grass, I'd have to cut the asparagus stalks off because they would grow every year back up into the soil, and it was just a real farm. It was a farm area,
Yeah.
and before it became the town of Levittown, and of course the town of Fairless Hills was right next to it. The two towns butted up together. Levittown and Fairless Hills, and the Fairless was named after Benjamin Fairless. I think he was the one who the Fairless U.S. Steel Works Fairless was named after. So that's a little bit of trivia. And what I wanted to do was talk about this concept of refined by fire, which was the process of taking the ore, and from actually I think it came from Venezuela, if I'm not mistaken, and it was shipped up to this mill that grew up and became the largest steel mill in the country, named for Benjamin Fairless. And it was called Fairless Works. And my father came up to work in that. He had been working at the Philadelphia Navy Yard. We're building ships, and he was that was his first occupation. And the Philadelphia Navy Yard is still there, although I think they don't build any ships down there any longer. But that they did at the time, and that's where he worked. And he wanted to move the family out of the city and moved us up to this new town that was opening up called Levittown. So that's how we moved to Levittown. And of course, my first practice was in Levittown, and we took care of a lot of people. Of course, the steel mill was the largest steel mill in the country, in the world, perhaps at that time, and it since is closed. It is closed down as a steel mill, just like most of the towns, most of the steel mills in my wife's hometown area also closed down. And but that's where I started out in Levittown with my first practice. And it was mostly made up of people who worked at the steel mill. So I had a lot of experience with the steel workers because they came in and they had built a large practice there. And they came in there were 3 shifts in the steel mill, so it ran all day long. And there were 3 shifts that worked there. So obviously I had a large practice all day long, because the fellows who worked 11 to 7 or 3 to 11 or whatever came in at odd hours. And I was able to build a large practice at that time. Now, when the steel mill became smaller and finally was phased out as a steel mill, my practice, of course, changed, and the shift changed, so that I didn't have to work most of the time. I only worked a few shifts a day.
You got to stay there till midnight anymore?
Pardon me?
You didn't have to stay there until midnight anymore?
Well, I don't ever remember being till midnight, but I had some late hours, and I also but because there were morning hours, because the guys who worked 11 to 7 could come in the morning, so I had some early morning hours also. And
what was a typical day for you at that time? Open when, close when?
Well, when I had when I had opened my practice, I had gone to school, and I had got up every morning at 5 o'clock to catch a train to New York City, because that's where the school was. And I decided to live at home and commute. And so I had to get up early to go to school. So I decided once I graduate, I'm not going to open my office until noontime. And that's when I opened it at noon.
Okay.
And but I didn't catch a lot of people at that time, and I eventually decided to open up at 11, then 10, and then 9, and at the end, In fact, well, the office was when I still had it. It was it ran from 9 in the morning till 9 at night, and but that was even after the mill,
Yeah.
the mill. But I still saw that. So I had that practice because I had bumped it up from more early morning out to early morning hours
Hmm.
when when the practice got larger and the mill was still going.
Yeah.
And yes, the mill ended up as a I don't I the mill's not going any longer, but they still use the property, and it was of course right outside my
Hmm.
town, and uh,
So with
so
your background and all this exposure to the steel workers and the steel mill, you had this thing growing up, this kind of being refined by fire concept in your mind.
yes, and I saw chiropractic being refined by fire. Obviously, the fire that chiropractic had most of the time was uh, the opposition of the medical profession,
Hmm.
and of course that's the model that I grew up in,
Right.
uh, the opposition of the medical profession. So I still had that conflict with the medical profession in my mind, and uh, I'm not sure that was really good, and I don't think that was really good for the chiropractic profession because the chiropractic profession just generally had that opposition to the medical profession
Right.
because they seem to be trying to uh, kill us off or get rid of us.
Right.
So that was that was the model in which I grew up in the chiropractic profession, and of course as we began to refine it, um, we got rid of that medical opposition, realizing that the medical profession is a legitimate profession, which of course the laws had already said that, and in fact the laws in the beginning when I was in started in practice said that as a chiropractor you could not take care of certain diseases, and of course that was one of the reasons why we decided to say, well, no, chiropractic is not to address a particular disease or any disease
Hmm.
or the cause of any disease, but chiropractic is the approach to correcting the cause of dis-ease. And of course, we made
Right.
the distinction between dis-ease and disease, which most of the chiropractic profession had not done. And as we began to refine what we were doing in chiropractic, we refined the idea that there's a clear difference, which the 33 principles don't even mention disease at
Right.
all. Them. It is the term is dis-ease, and there's quite a difference. You know, disease being the presence of something, as opposed to dis-ease, which is the absence of something and the absence of
Right.
coordinated function within the body. So that's the model that I grew up in, and I had to kind of uh, differentiate that, and of course that created a problem within our profession. Even those chiropractors who were still in opposition to medicine, uh, and had and they had maintained the concept that that we're an alternative or an opposition
Hmm.
or something in the practice of medicine, and that kind of created a conflict within the so-called straight chiropractic community. In fact, because at that point, uh, BJ's, even though his definition, the philosophy, art, and science of things natural, a system of adjusting the segments of the spine by hand only for the correction of the cause of dis-ease.
Right.
Even though BJ still held to that, most people in the profession were kind of merging or mixing chiropractic with with the practice of medicine.
Hmm.
And of course, at one point in the school's development, the college where I taught, in their development, we were we were not talking about disease or diseases, which most of the other schools were talking about, and
Hmm.
but we weren't. We were making a distinction between that and those other schools. All the schools were again addressing uh, the adjustment as the cause of disease rather than
Right.
dis hyphen ease, and that of course created conflict within our
Right.
school and the rest of the schools, and of course that's at that time when the credit agency that developed began to address uh, chiropractic and disease rather than dis hyphen ease.
Right.
And but we took the position that no, we address dis-ease rather than disease, and the cause of dis-ease, meaning vertebral subluxation, rather than the cause of disease, which, of course, according to medicine, disease has a lot of causes,
Right.
and so that's where that distinction took place and that development took place. Um,
Well, then you mentioned that how there's clearly many causes of disease, and then yet we have a very popular book entitled "One Cause, One Cure," coming from BJ Sane, and it's just, and I think even in that instance, too often what they're talking about is that there's one cause for all disease versus the cause and correction of dis-ease. And I think it's important that chiropractors make sure they're clear on what they're saying, and so they don't confuse their practice members and the public in general when they use these phrases. It's important that we're clear on terms and what we mean, so that we aren't conveying something we don't intend to convey.
yeah, and I think that was clear to us and clear to our mission statement as far as the school was concerned, but obviously was not something that the rest of the chiropractic profession and the rest of the chiropractic schools were clear on, and they had, of course, coming from the very beginning when DD thought he had a cure for the cause of hearing loss, and we said, well, no, that's not it. And then of course we had the issue of handheld instruments, and that could create a conflict within the chiropractic community, at least the so-called straight chiropractic community, were those that held to uh, BJ's by hand only, and uh, and at that particular time there was a handheld instrument that was being proposed to the profession by a certain fellow who was part of the straight chiropractic movement. And he said, well, wait a minute, I have this instrument that people use to introduce a force into the spine. And we had to come to a decision on that and say, yeah, okay, well, if that's what your intention is to do, that's legitimate.
Yeah.
And but of course, since then, I think some people who use that instrument have used it to adjust knees and adjust
Sure.
other joints of the body, and we say, well, that's not acceptable. So that created a conflict within the chiropractic profession, just as this whole idea of refining chiropractic, and that's basically that what we were doing, and we've been continued to do that, and we've had to, as a say, well, no, as long as our objective is to correct the cause of interference in the nervous system at the vertebral level, which
Right.
means we don't adjust outside that area. And there are chiropractors who do that, and that, of course, refined
Yeah.
the scope of chiropractic even further,
Hmm.
and that's what created some problems. Just as in making steel, which was what I was raised with that idea
Right.
that making steel kinds real refines things and refines the steel into its legitimate purpose rather than mix it with something else.
Right.
And you have to burn off in the steel making process. You have to create a lot of heat, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what we ended up doing within the profession. Create a lot of heat to refine chiropractic, and I think to some degree we're still refining it. Will we ever refine it to the point that it's perfect? Well, I don't even with the refining process that makes gold or silver, it's still they when you buy a piece of a bar of silver, they still only make it 99.9%
Yeah.
pure, and that's what they advertise,
Yeah.
and maybe we're at that 99.9%. Whether we'll ever be perfect, I don't know.
Right.
Uh, in philosophically, will we ever be perfect? I don't know, because we have human beings that function within the chiropractic profession,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, human beings are less than perfect.
Yeah.
Uh, so
It's such a great analogy. I love it because you think about it, like you just said, the refining process is a purification process in some sense. You're taking out the impurities and trying to get this thing down into its most complete and pure form. And I think some chiropractors think they're doing that when they're progressing the profession. And those two words can mean such a different thing. Whereas if we're progressing the profession, that's when we started to add things to it many times. We're we're improving upon something versus refining it, and improving upon it. Again, we start bringing in other medical procedures and supplementation, massage therapy, whatever it might be, versus stripping it down into its most pure form. So it's a great analogy that you got there.
yeah, and and I think that a lot of chiropractors, focused on that idea of things natural, and they say,
Mm,
well, okay, we'll prescribe natural supplements or
right, right.
not natural things, or massage maybe
Yeah,
natural, and it's by hand only, and we'll
yeah,
say fine, and there's those things. They may be legitimate, they may be valuable, they may be natural, but are they chiropractic? And of course, as we've uh, defined and refined what we're doing in chiropractic, we have eliminated things, and that's what the refining process really was done. Those smokestacks were burning 24 hours a day, to burn off uh, they call it the slag. It was not part of the steel making process,
hmm
so they had to burn that off,
yeah,
and there were big mountains of stuff that they made uh, in the farmland, which was originally farmland,
hmm
became slag heats, and of course eventually they had to make it into as the town grew. It eventually became uh, city dumps,
yeah,
where where they had to dump everything, and of course, people made trash and garbage and all that. In fact, I had a patient who who actually worked there, and he worked through the process when it was made into waste management took it over, because the slag, or the residue from burning making steel, became what they called slag, and then they had to dump that somewhere. And
yeah,
when they also the towns began to grow, they began to make it into uh, uh, piles of waste. And he worked for the township at that time, and he had the idea of building the because they had done it in another part where the first uh, dump was. They had actually sunk pipes into the ground in this dump, and and let off uh, methane gas,
Oh yeah.
and and they burned it to try to get rid of some methane gas, and people used to build what do you, they put what do you call them, trailers,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
and burned this methane gas to heat their trailers,
Oh wow.
and of course,
Resourceful.
pardon me.
They're
Yeah,
being
and
very
he had the idea
resourceful.
when they built the dumps in to fill up the slag piles, or to cover up the slag piles. He had the idea of he wanted to. He worked for the township at that time, and he said, "Why don't we just sink pipes into the ground, and we can put the gas grills in the dumps, and people can have their gas grills working and we can burn that off, and they can cook hot dogs." And I don't think the idea ever caught on,
It doesn't
because
sound too
people
good.
didn't want
No.
to cook hot dogs over gas that sounded like rotting garbage, which was
Yeah.
what it was. And I guess people are worry about the time when and run out of it, and that's why so many people are interested in uh, in uh, the idea of ref- doing something else with that gas.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
We
and
know when
we're
you as you're speaking about all this refinement process also and how it applies to chiropractic, when you think about the it's not always comfortable. You think about the steel workers and you see images and pictures of these guys and they're working and it's hot in there. They're sweating, they're dirty. It's a difficult job. It can be very painful at times. And so
and it was dangerous. It was dangerous. Yeah.
right. And that and too. And so my idea is for us in chiropractic, it can be a painful process having to really get ourselves in line with this philosophy, but it's always worth it in the end. It's always worth it because at the end you have something that's rewarding, that's beautiful, that people can relate to, that can change their life. And so it takes some work. It can be tough, but it's worth it. And too many people, and this is just my thoughts in general in life, but people want to take the easy route. They want what's comfortable. They're afraid to get uncomfortable. And so that's where I think a lot of times we have all this stuff being added to chiropractic. It's easier to do that than it is to refine things. And we can't be afraid of doing the hard work necessary to get to that point because it is worth it in the end.
And it turned out to be dangerous work as far as the college that I taught at, because it's at one point all the schools were changing. All the schools were adopting other things to make them more acceptable.
Yeah.
And in fact, I recall lecturing at one of the colleges at one time, and the instructor, the students who got me into the job, got me into, not into the job but into coming to lecture. uh, they they thought the same way I did, but they got me into a diagnosis class to be a guest speaker for that day, and obviously the instructor in that diagnosis class wasn't happy with me being there, and in fact that he he was trying to point out how well they were doing, that now their students, the students who do well in their courses in the school, get to work in a hospital and do rounds with the medical students. And I said, well, I think that you should have the poorest students go and do rounds with the medical students rather than the best students, because the best students understand what their objective is. But by that time, this school had lost that objective of refining chiropractic, and they were now putting um, other procedures into
Yeah.
chiropractic, which we say are fine, and they may even be natural. They may be done by
Right.
hand, uh, but
The fact that we don't do it, or we don't, it's not part of our profession, isn't a judgment on that thing. It's just, it's not what we do. It's just something else.
and we have come from that background of judging medicine and saying medicine is bad. And I went through a period of that because I went through that transition period.
Part of
Uh,
the refinement process. I did
and,
too.
and yeah, and so came to that position where no, medicine's bad, and we say no, medicine's not bad. It's just not what we do, and it's just
Hmm.
something else. And we need to appreciate or recognize the people who do that. And I can I can recall BJ at one time. He had a fellow who was, I think, his chauffeur, and this fellow developed some kind of medical condition. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it, the fellow had came down with diabetes or developed diabetes, and BJ, said to him, well, you need to go to the medical profession, and you need to go to a medical doctor and have that treated, because
Hmm.
obviously it couldn't be treated. And this fellow said, no, I've lived by chiropractic, and I'll die by chiropractic. And
Yeah.
and so he did that. And BJ himself actually had gone, I think BJ had developed cancer and had that treated medically. And I guess because BJ wanted to prolong his life, or prolong his death, whichever way you look at it. Um, and so BJ went and had medical procedures done in the last year or so of his life, and it didn't prolong it any longer.
Yeah.
Uh, he did stop writing, and maybe that was good or bad, but whatever. He didn't feel like he needed it anymore. He probably felt like he had said everything, and a lot of people think he said everything, and they still go by what he said, not understanding that perhaps there's something else that can be said to explain chiropractic that still is part of the refinement process, and not necessarily part of the diagnosis or the medical procedure process. And
Right.
so that's what this video thing that you're doing right now is endeavoring to do, and allowing somebody who's had the experience of being in among the refining process, who has gone through uh, all the processes of refining up until
Yes.
today, is has been
Yeah.
invited to come in and to speak. And I'm sure there are a lot of procedures out there, or a lot of videotapes, or a lot of things that are being done now that are trying to teach people how to mix things that would make it less than 99.9% pure.
Yes.
And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate in the process that you're attempting to
Uh,
follow, of continuing to refine it a little bit more, and to continue to under, get people to understand that refining process that
yeah.
we're going
Perfect.
through.
Yeah. Well,
Excuse me.
I love it. I love it. I love the whole idea, and that's a book that everyone should have and everyone should read.
Yeah.
Flying by Fire.
In fact, I just had an order for one of them, and the people who run the warehouse where they're shipped out of said we don't have any more in there.
Oh
So
no.
I have to run down to my old office, and Judy has graciously said, well, I can continue to store them in the basement until I use them all up.
There you
Uh,
go.
but I have to go down there and get one, so this person can have one shipped out to them, and hopefully, as more people get into understanding this whole idea of refinement process, maybe more people will have an interest in reading Refined by Fire, and I'll have to run down and pick up a box of them from the basement out of
Yes.
Judy's, which is now Judy's office.
Uh-huh.
She just took over the office about a month ago,
Right.
and so I don't know whether she's going to
Awesome.
continue to keep my name on the front of the front door of it, since I have been physically gone for 6 years now, but she still has kept my name on the front. It's now officially her office in her building, and it was her office. When I left, I turned the office over to her, but
Now
I
she
made
is.
property, and now the property and the building, and everything is hers now. And whether she'll decide to keep my name on it just out of respect for me and what I started and what I built there, and what she's taken over, and she's
Yeah,
continued to develop it, and and uh, and
that's great.
allow it to progress, only progress in the pure form,
Yes, absolutely.
which needs progression, and that's
Yeah.
why I have no problem with people who want to who want to develop the art and the techniques that we use, and to improve upon them. And I think there are people out there doing that, and I've talked to some of them. And I think I've uh, provided a video or two for people who wanted to do
Mhm.
that, to
Well,
uh,
the refinement process is a form of progression. You're taking something and moving it into a different state, but not in the sense that it's often used today anyway.
yeah, and unfortunately, that's the concept, and that's where we run into a conflict within our chiropractic. In fact, another book I wrote was Conflict of Philosophy, and
Hmm.
putting the trying to delineate and define the difference between refining the process and the progress of refining chiropractic, and it is a progress, then, and the difference of between that and making chiropractic something else. Not that they're, and maybe we don't even need to condemn uh, the uh, the other process. Uh, when my father worked at U.S. Steel, they had another branch that they had, which was the one he actually worked at, which was
Hmm.
called National Tube, where they made piping and pipes and tubes, for the for the out of steel. And in fact, when the town I was in was built, uh, the builder, a fellow from originally from New York. Uh, in fact, he helped build a town called Levittown in New York, and uh, I think that one of his most famous people was Bill O'Reilly, who
Uh,
uh, taught school there, and was well known. And but anyway, Levittown, New York, was created, and Levittown, Pennsylvania, where I was from, uh, became a a town. But when the town was first built, they used orange board, which was Orangeburg was a form of uh, cardboard, and they used that for pipes,
mhm.
and obviously it then Levitt also was big on building trees, and so he built he had uh, trees which were weeping willow trees was one of the trees that you had built, and he had decided to put them right over this Orangeburg pipe.
Yeah.
Uh, which which would carry the sewer line, and and eventually the living trees uh, were able to cause the Orangeburg pipe to deteriorate, and they got into the Orangeburg pipe, and people in Levittown had to have the trees dug up and have steel pipe put in that
Yeah.
wouldn't be broken down by the roots of these weeping willow trees, because weeping willow trees were best put right near a creek or a stream or a river, because they used a lot of water apparently, and
Mhm.
that was the source. So everybody in Levittown was getting their pipes replaced with steel pipes made by U.S. Steel, which would not be deteriorated, at least not as quickly
Right.
as this cardboard stuff that the pipes were originally made into when Levittown was built. And it took years for that pipe to be deteriorated, to be generated by the roots of the willow trees that were built right on top of the
Mm.
sewer line. But that was uh, that was interesting. So you're getting a history
Well, again,
of things that are
that's
and not refined. And so we're actually, it seems like whenever we refine something, we take things away, and that's what the refining process is. And
yeah.
unfortunately, with our chiropractic profession, when we take away things, we tend to lose people, and we tend to have people uh, leave the profession or leave chiropractic or leave
Yeah.
the approach to chiropractic that you're presenting here, and I'm trying to contribute to on
Hmm.
on this program. But we tend to lose people, and we tend
Yeah.
to get smaller and smaller, making a steel girder, uh, which is what they built where the town that my wife was raised in. Uh,
Well, that's just
steel,
it. You think about practicing chiropractic from the objective straight model, in terms of strength, it's a very strong position to be in because you have this philosophy to support it and you're able to, again, present things to people in a logical way where you're not going to be contradicting yourself. You're not making empty promises of, of curing diseases. and and it's a very honest approach. And you think of that and this approach as the strong built from steel structure. And then the other side, it's kind of like the cardboard pipes where it's susceptible to breakdown. There's going to be easy ways to infiltrate it because it's on a foundation of sand and it just isn't going to support. And that's where people get frustrated because, well, you're promising people things you can't keep in terms of I'm going to make your back pain or headaches or your digestive problems go away. And so I think it's sad for me to think people are being deceived by that and they're going that way when we have this option over here that's built on such a strong, solid philosophical foundation. And that's why I'm encouraged to have you here and to reach people and let them see this. And hopefully they can make the decision to move over here because it's going to give them a position of strength to work from and a place where people are going to be, um, attracted to because of the philosophy that supports that position.
yeah, and I think that in my practice, and I think I'm sure in your practice, there are people who who say, yeah, that sounds right. It's philosophically correct. It's practically correct. From a practical standpoint, it's correct, and people can utilize that and benefit from it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we say that chiropractic is not a procedure or a product. I see them come on the television all the time. They say this procedures or this product is not guaranteed to
Yeah.
cure or treat or alleviate anything.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we say in chiropractic. We don't guarantee to treat, cure, or alleviate anything. All we
Right.
say is that with your body will work better with a good nerve supply. Whether that will be enough to for you, your body working better will be sufficiently for you to
Yes.
notice a difference or have a medical condition cured, because we do know that people have medical conditions cured under chiropractic care. D.D. Palmer was the first to demonstrate that,
Right.
but I think he made the mistake of saying, you know, we can cure every disease
Yeah.
by that. And then that was found to be uh, incorrect, because not every disease was cured by
Right.
D.D. Palmer's adjustments, even though there were a lot of people who got better who didn't even have hearing problems when they went to a chiropractor, but they got better because the body does heal itself. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
if I ever had the opportunity or the desire to write a new philosophy book, I think I would start on principle number one being that the body does heal itself,
Yeah.
rather than one that people can mistake and
Yeah.
universal intelligence for God. But just start off with the presentation that the body does heal itself. Everybody who's ever been healed in the history of mankind has been healed because the body does have the ability to heal itself.
Right.
Sometimes, and that's what BJ or GD, Reggie used to always say. You know, the body heals itself sometimes,
Yeah.
and and chiropractors have founded, placed their whole life
Yeah.
on doing that, and sometimes they've gone from from the point of saying chiropractic can cure everything. Well, anything that is cured by the body
Mm-hmm.
healing itself. Maybe it does that because they've alleviated the symptoms by a medical procedure, or alleviating it by the use of medical procedures, or surgical procedures, cutting out the part that doesn't work right. You know, it's
Right.
true that will never cause any problem again. But that's not our objective. Our objective is to enable the body to work better. Whether that working better is sufficient to enable your body to cure itself, or whether that is enable better than working better, enable your body to work good enough that you can live with that medical condition
Yeah.
to a certain point,
Yes.
or whether you can live with that condition for another year or
Mm-hmm.
two, like Dee Dee did, or that fellow who was his chauffeur. We don't know. We have no idea how long that will be, but we say that that's a decision that an individual has to make for themselves, because it's their body
Yes.
their body that has to either survive or pass on or pass
Mm-hmm.
away. But that's not our decision to make, and
Right.
that's why we don't make that decision for people.
Well, I think that's so important. I just yesterday at the office had a lady who's been coming to our office for well over 10 years. And about 2 years ago, she got into a horrific motorcycle accident. It's a miracle she's alive. It was really bad. And anyway, since that time, her body's just been a mess, and all this stuff's going on, and these aches and pains and problems. And she's frustrated, understandably so, because of that. And anyway, yesterday she was talking about this frustration she's experiencing with all these pains that haven't gone away, and how maybe she should do something else. And by that, what she meant was stop chiropractic and go and do something else, because obviously in her mind, this isn't working for her. And my point is this is a woman who I thought got it, because she's been in her office for, like I said, over 10 years, coming on a regular basis, coming weekly, getting her adjustments. When she felt great, she was coming then. And so she wasn't coming because she had pain. And, but my point is that this process, we got to make sure we keep on people in a good way. and keep educating them on what we're trying to do. And I did my best yesterday, and I explained to her that, yeah, you might want to go and look at some other options, but at the same time, doesn't mean you stop getting adjusted. And I had to reinforce to her that no matter what else is going on, whether the aches or pains go away or not, if you choose to do something else or not, you still have to have a healthy nervous system. And so I think maybe for some chiropractors, the idea is that once you tell somebody this message one time, that they've got it. We got to understand that we have to keep on, in different and creative ways, presenting this message of objective straight chiropractic to people, because they're in our office for a few minutes and then they're out in the mechanistic medical world the other rest of the week. So they're getting bombarded with those messages and these concepts. And so we can't give up the fight, so to speak, I guess is what I want to say. No matter what, we got to make sure we keep on it, and we're diligent and vigilant on conveying this message to people, because they got to be reminded of it. And yeah, that was just, as you were speaking, that popped in my mind, that the importance of making sure we keep telling people the message.
Yeah, yeah, and as far as that woman's concerned, she needs to realize that she's got 25 to 30 quadrillion cells besides the ones that are not, don't seem to be functioning well, and she
Yes.
needs to have a good. They all need to have a good nerve supply, as long as she's got those cells, and that as long as she's got those 25 to 30 quadrillion cells that are capable of functioning properly, she needs to make sure all of them are working as well as they possibly can. And I think that's something that every person needs to understand. Unfortunately, most of our profession is not getting that idea across to people as they come in, and we know that so many people don't even get that, even if they go to the right chiropractor. Like the lady who came to you yesterday, she has either not got it or forgot it,
Yeah. And it might be that the situation is kind of, her understanding might have been at a certain level, and all the frustration of the accident has overcome that, and she's kind of like maybe forgot or blocked it out. And so I guess my point of that story also was how the fact that reading your books, studying this information, and everything else that I've invested into the philosophy helped me in this situation, because even if I hadn't had this, I might have responded in a bad way, in terms of felt in a competitive point where I maybe lashed out at her because she doubted me. If I took that personally, or if I thought, how dare her now want to give up on chiropractic and go do some medical work. But I had to step back and go in her situation and look at that and realize that, hey, it's okay. It's not us versus them. She can go see a medical doctor while she's still coming here. Where if you have the one cause, one cure mentality, now you get kind of needy on people and almost possessive of people, that they can only go here and they can never go anywhere else. It's like, no, they can come here and do other things too. And then also, because of spending some time trying to figure this stuff out, I was able to bring her back and explain to her that, again, it doesn't matter what your situation is, whether you're an Olympic athlete or you have stage 4 cancer, you're always going to be better off with a healthy nerve supply. So that was I guess the whole idea behind that story there. Just having this knowledge allowed me to handle that situation in a way where she left understanding that, and was, it made sense to her again. And she knew that I care about her, that I want to see I want her to get what's best for her. And if that means doing some other things that I don't do, that's okay. And I'm not, whereas I think in some medical offices, for sure, we know this happens, where they say, oh, don't go see the chiropractor, period. And in some chiropractic offices, that happens, where they say, oh, no, you just stay here. I'll get you fixed. We'll get this taken care of here. And people can see through that stuff, and they start to sense that, well, you really don't care about me. It's just about you protecting your ego and and you being right. So she
Yeah.
sees that I care about her.
Or the third possibility is that the chiropractor may tend to adopt those things into use in his office, and
Yes.
and try to do those things, especially if they seem to
Yeah.
be natural.
Oh yeah.
Whatever form natural tends to take these
Right.
days.
And I've heard chiropractors do that, and they justify it as, well, they're going to get it somewhere, so they might as well have it done here.
Right, right. And I guess in depending on this what the state allows them to do, they can do well anything. I think in some states they even can do minor surgery. I
Yes.
think
Oregon, I believe.
yes, and so I think that as long as we keep reminding ourselves and reminding our people as well as we possibly can, that well, you still need a good nerve supply,
Yeah.
and that's what you're coming here for. And it's funny because I take my car to be fixed, and they check a lot of things on that car, but there's things that I could do myself. I can fill up the windshield washer container
Yeah.
and ready for, and I don't have to take them to do that. Granted, they check those things, and if it's low, they'll fill it up, but I could do that myself. I don't choose to. I don't choose to. I don't choose to do that, or recharge or replace a battery or something like that, because that's not something that I can do myself.
Right.
And that's something, and we chiropractors need to know what we do, the importance of what we do, the value to people of what we do, and what our limitations are. And I think what was the great philosopher once said, a man's got to know his limitations. And I think that philosopher was Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood. I was going to say it's Clint Eastwood. Yes. Yeah.
I think he said that to Holbrook in one of his movies
Uh-huh.
before he threw a bomb in the back of in the back of Holbrook's car. I think that Holbrook had a group of policemen who were trying to wipe out all the criminals in town, and who were assassinating criminals.
Uh-huh.
The man's got to know his limitations, and I think that's what we know as our limitations. And we tend to recognize our limitations, and but we also recognize the good service that we provide for people, and I think that's what you're about doing on these programs, and I appreciate that very much.
Yes.
I appreciate the opportunity to be part of it.
Yeah. Well, I think there's no better place to. I think that's.
Finish? Did we finish this? We didn't finish
those. That's all right.
23 principles yet.
Like I said, we're in no rush here, so. And I think there's no better place to stop than on words of wisdom from Clint Eastwood. So that's perfect.
Yeah, right. Yeah, one of the great philosophers, Harry Callahan.
Harry Callahan. Love it.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, thank you.
Well, so next time we'll pick up on, where are we? What did I say? We're 13.
You're going to move me through a few more.
I love it. Like I said, I think that's good. Whenever you've got an idea or you've got something you want to share, we can. That was perfect. That was good. I think the message of being refined by fire is something that is well spent time talking about.